2, 1. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here, O. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I am so excited to have you on the show, man. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling great.
All right. I love it. All right, folks, this is such a treat. I always enjoy interviewing members of the SHAIR Recovery Network. Mark has been a super, super active member in the group for years now. He's a writer. He's a blogger. As a matter of fact, Mark, his website, The Miracle of the Mundane, and I read it in the About Us section, quotes the definition of the word mundane. So Merriam-Webster, through its definition of the mundane, defines ordinary life as dull. I find all ordinary life to be a miracle. My poetry, essays, and creative nonfiction exalt the everyday. Writing has made being sober more than just being sober. I invite you to follow this blog and connect with me on social media and join me in discovering what makes the ordinary so extraordinary and the mundane miraculous. I absolutely love that, man. It's just a beautiful, it's short, it's sweet, and it's all about what our life becomes and
That's
what
right.
so many addicts and alcoholics are terrified of.
So terrified of.
Absolutely terrified of it.
Oh, man, made me shiver in my boots thinking about a normal life with a mortgage and a wife and a steady job. That was the last thing I wanted. Yeah.
Well, the cool thing is that now
it was.
I look at, for example, I look at your life. You have a beautiful family, right? You got 2 kids, right?
2 kids, yeah.
What are the ages?
5 and 2. Actually, she just turned 3.
5 and 3. You know,
Yeah.
and the cool thing is we get to watch, our families grow up on Facebook, which is always fun. And the thing is, we talk about worrying about life being mundane. And I look at the photos of you and your family, and they're just gorgeous, right? And it just looks like life is wonderful. Happiness and joy and love, right? It seems the furthest thing from mundane to me.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what the blog is about. It's trying to capture those moments that are so much more than just everyday boring moments. And I found, my life with my family has been the greatest gift that I have ever received. And I would not receive that gift if I weren't sober. So, the idea for a blog was just embracing what I used to run from. I just never find the ideas just are constantly coming because life continues to amaze and baffle me. The simple joys of life just continue to make it, really worth living and loving.
Man, I love it. So we're going to definitely talk about what inspired you to launch Miracle of the Mundane. But first, tell us a little bit about what your normal daily routine looks like, including recovery.
So I have things every week that I look forward to. I play pickup basketball a couple nights a week. I have a writers group that I go to. I attend 12-step meetings. I go out to eat with newcomers, old timers, and sobriety. So my week is always pretty filled. I have a pretty needy social schedule, as my wife can attest to. And I'm just very grateful that she can accommodate me. I think she might know just how crazy I become when I don't get to have these outlets,
Yes.
But on a daily routine, I'm the first person up in the house. Usually the last to bed too, but I find that if I get up early, I can write, and that's something that has been a major bright spot in my recovery is the creativity that sobriety has unleashed in me. So I like to write every day, and I'll get up before the kids, and I'll write until they wake up, and then getting those kids to preschool is a job unto itself. But then my day job is I teach literature at an all-boys Catholic school in suburban Maryland, where I also live. So that keeps me pretty busy. But the main bookends of my day are writing in the morning before anyone gets up, and then after everyone's asleep, I read. And, I read until I fall asleep. I find if I'm reading something good, it'll be keeping me up. Other than that, the family life just fills up weekends, and it just never ends. So that stuff is a constant, barrage of activity. I keep pretty busy, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And I don't know if I could stay sane. Omar, I don't idle well, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
I really don't do a good job of just sort of, settling down and being inactive. I sort of need a constant, schedule of stuff and things to do and think about and meet. And, I live for all that stuff. So I do have a pretty busy schedule.
What I love too is that one of the things that we dove into and got quoted quite a bit in my last episode with Tommy Rosen is that as much as we don't like structure in the beginning, right? We thrive. We absolutely thrive in structure as addicts, right? The more structured we are, the more we thrive. We think we don't want, because we categorize structure as something that somebody else is giving to us or putting on us, right? So pushing against the machine is one thing. But for me, structure is key, right? Like my whole week has to be structured. I have to know where most of my week is going to before I go into it, right? Yeah. Or my anxiety level already goes through the roof. I can't enjoy my weekend, right? So my Google Calendar is my best friend. Is my absolute best friend. So I get it. So now another thing I want to ask you too is I'm curious because you talk about you play pickup basketball, you got a writers group, you go to 12-step meetings. So you've got a hobby, right? A sports hobby that you do that probably keeps you in shape. Then you've got this writers group that I'm curious about. How many people are in that writers group?
Yeah. On and off, it's 6. And we read, roughly a chapter of a book. We read 3 of those every week. So, I'm submitting something new that the group will discuss about every other week.
Okay.
And that's another thing. I mean, I'm religious about that. I mean, I don't miss those. I don't miss those meetings unless there's a death in the family. Because it is really important to me. And I know it's hard for people to understand something like that could be taken so seriously, but it's just I need it,
No, that's just my point, and that's why I wanted. That's the light bulb went off because a lot of what we talk about and a lot of the success when it comes to recovery, especially when we're discussing 12-step recovery, is being a part of. It's the community aspect of the recovery program. So by myself, somebody can hand me the big book or hand me a basic text, right? Or hand me some sort of 12-step literature, say, go home, work your steps, right? And you'll be right as rain, right? But the reality of it is the only way that they suggest not working the steps is by yourself. Okay. And a lot of what happens, a lot of the magic that happens in recovery is the meetings after the meetings. So that has to do with community. So when we talk about, you've got 3 activities that have to be done with people. Basketball is with a whole group of people. It's camaraderie, it's competition, it's friendship, it's all that kind of stuff. The writing is 6 people in there. You guys are meeting, you guys are talking, fraternizing, right? The whole thing. 12-step, it's the same thing, right? How important is community for you?
Very important. I like the way you put that question. I think that's incredibly important. If the opposite of addiction is community and connection, then that's something I'm glad we're talking about. Between my school community, the community where I live, where I'm raising my kids with other parents who are raising their kids, like you say, basketball, and from listservs to the all these different communities I am in, they all hold me accountable, in a different way, and I think that's really important. It's almost a daily accountability thing. I mean, somebody is counting on me in one way or another almost every breath I take, and at times that can be overwhelming. Part, it's a gift because I have to show up every day. I'm expected places. I'm responsible for people, and with all of that circulating around my schedule and the things I'm planning and thinking about, I mean, who's got time to think of a drink?
Correct.
Right.
Which is my whole
yeah, it's like I get so wrapped up in life that drinking and drugging, which used to be the only thing I knew and the only thing I cared about, become the last thing on my mind. And so, yeah, I think it's very important to have a community and have people who, kind of expect you to be places. And it's important that, as recovering addicts, we show up when we're expected to, and that we make a habit out of that. So I think it's very important, like you said.
Okay. So then listeners, right, and those watching, right, the most important facet of all this is that there's always something that you can complain about in any situation. Okay. That's part of being a human being. Okay. When we first get introduced to anything, we want to push back. There's something that somebody's going to say that's going to make me feel uncomfortable, and I'm not going to like it. Mark's got 3 things that he does on a regular basis that he can pick and choose from at any given moment. And if he wants to lean in on one over another, he's got the opportunity to do so. So for me, as far as when it comes to recovery, right, it's for me, especially early on, the more you can be involved in community, the better. So if you've got three opportunities to participate in community, if 2 of them piss you off, you've still got this other one, okay? Because a lot of people are like, I just hate the meetings, and I'm just not going to go to the meetings, and I don't like the people in the meetings. I got nothing else. Find a basketball game. Find a writer's club. Find a reading club, a book club. Yeah. Find something that you can plug yourself into, and you have a place that you can go communicate with other people and just get that human connection and energy going, regardless of what it is, right? I like to remove the dogma from everything. So if we just take it and we just use the principles of being connected with other people, then any one of these 3 areas will work. If I'm in a writer's club, right, and they're holding me accountable, and it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's something that I can shift my energy away from the alcoholism. If I'm playing basketball, I'm releasing all these endorphins, right? Whatever I'm using that'll allow me to push away from the addiction, push away from the cravings, push away from the loneliness, push away from the isolation, and connect myself with other people, then this is another way that you can go. What do you think about that, Mark?
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting it on the head there. It is not, going to meetings or just finding one outlet for your time is not the end all be all. I mean, and especially nowadays, we can connect in so many different ways. And however particular our interests are, there's a group out there that we can share our interests with, right? Like if all you do is love to crochet, you probably can go out and find a knitting circle to join. I mean, whatever your passion is, it is shared by other people, and connecting with those other people is so critical. I agree with you 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So this is good. I love the way this started off because,
yeah, it's good talking to you, though.
I love it.
I am for all the listener, I am a long-time listener, first-time caller, So, Doc.
He is a long-time listener, guys. And it's funny because I've watched him and I think did you just celebrate some clean time?
Yeah, I had 10 years in October.
10 years, right? And I'm pretty sure, and I can't even remember what it was. something sparked me, right? But he, you know, Mark's one of those guys that's been active for years in the SHAIR Recovery Network, and I was like, why hasn't Mark asked me to be on the show yet? Right. So I reached out to him. Right. And it was like, well, you know, I'm waiting to publish my book. Fuck that. You know, let's go. I want to hear your story, man. And so do the other members. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the disease. Right. So number one, oh no, we're not going there yet. Spiritual condition. That's very important to me. And I don't know where that sits with you, but I always like to ask, how do you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with your higher power?
3 ways, you know: prayer, meditation, and working with others. I'm a big believer in prayer. Recovery has revolutionized what I thought prayer was and what it could do for me. But I understand prayer. If I'm either praying for other people, and when possible, I pray from my knees to demonstrate humility. That I am less than the creator of the universe. Because I need a reminder of that every now and then. If I'm praying for myself, I pray for things like, courage to do the right thing. I pray for, for my nerves to settle if I'm worried about something. I pray for the internal things, not the external things. And I have found answers to my prayers in just miraculous ways. I've said things that I never thought I would say. I've done things I never thought I could do. Literally out-of-body experiences where I get the sensation that I am looking in at myself, saying the words that I'm saying in the moment. And it's none of this started happening until I started praying. And meditation is important to me. My favorite definition of prayer and meditation is: prayer is asking and meditation is listening. So there's not much good in doing nothing but praying if I'm not going to meditate and try to listen for an answer. And I've had a back and forth relationship with meditation. For a while, I just said, well, you know what, I write. And I wake up an hour and a half before the kids, and that's my meditation. But, I've lately, a friend of mine got me to read One Breath at a Time. Actually, Matt, who's pretty active in the SHAIR group as well, got me to read One Breath at a Time by Kevin Griffin. And that has helped me kind of go back to traditional meditation, where I'm getting quiet, I'm getting mindful, I'm concentrating on my breath. And another thing that book did was totally expand my notion of what meditating is. I meditated the other day. I mean, my baby girl, who I love to death, was having a tantrum, as all 3-year-olds do. Mm-hmm. But I sat there, and I know that this is going to last for a couple minutes. There's nothing I can do because she's in a tantrum. So I sat there, I closed my eyes, I got quiet, and I meditated. And I allowed that, her screams to be the screams of a toddler who's got to go through this at times, no matter what I do or say, and I was able to just sit there and accept the fact that she's screaming. And it was one of the most profound meditations I've ever had. And, it was done over a screaming child, so it's moments like that. I find, I try to sneak in that meditation wherever I can, where I just deliberately, because I won't do this. I will start in the morning. I will get up early. I will start writing. And I will go from one thing to another, and I will stay busy until I crash at night. And that is not sustainable. It really isn't. I mean, I have pushed the limits of that.
I resemble that remark.
So it's like, man, I need to take time and say, like, no, I'm not going to do anything for these next 5 or 10 minutes. I don't meditate for long, but it's like I need to pause. And if there's a question I need to ask, I ask it. and I get quiet. And the third thing I mentioned was working with others. And I think that's the biggest joy that my recovery has brought me in terms of, recovery itself is, getting to pass on the things that I've been taught to other people and helping newcomers come in and stay sober. That is the most remarkable journey I've been on. It's like I get to relive everything I went through, but I don't have to relive the suffering. I get to relive just the good stuff. And that I know, that is a lifelong, I pray, a lifelong practice is helping others, especially in early recovery, get sober and clean.
Dude, I applaud you being able to meditate through a screaming toddler. You're the force must be very strong with you, Mark.
Yeah. It wasn't as pretty as it sounds, I don't think, but I at least had my eyes closed.
I wear these. I have my tricks for meditation, just because I need to. There's always that bustle that happens right when you first start to meditate, and I will go on a roll where especially when I'm conflicted or I'm in a state where I want to change something, or I feel like I need to change something, right? But I've already got a very strong routine, so it's easy for me to be very consistent about my routine. But for example, in the last couple of weeks, I've been launching the new SHAIR Recovery community platform. And so I've been doing what you were talking about right now. As soon as you said it, I was like, wow, I resemble that remark. Get up in the morning, and as soon as I get up, there's 12 things in my head, just 12 monkeys in there going, we got to do this, got to go that, check this, go do that, it's like, boom. And you're right. It's from the beginning, from like the moment I get up until I crash, right? And it's not sustainable. And on Sunday, I had to finally go and do what you're talking about and find that quiet time. And here, I put these on there. I never wear these when I'm doing interviews, because they're just there's these ridiculous, and they're Beats headsets where all the stuffing has come off of them.
Yeah.
But they drown out the sound. So I put those on, and I put one of those eye patch things on, and I put a 10-minute insight timer guided meditation.
Oh, nice.
And when that's done, then I sit in silence. And that allows me to drown it out. But I will tell you this, and this as well as I do. When you get on the meditation train, you've done it long enough that your brain and your body get used to it and recognize when you're about to meditate, and it channels that state. It immediately, like, I'll recognize it. It goes, even though the brain is all chattery and I'm trying to, it goes, I know what we're trying to do, because it feels so good.
Yeah.
There's that moment where once you've done it for a couple of weeks in a row and you sit down to meditate, you just, it's like transcendental meditation. You just kind of, you go into that galaxy, whatever the case may be. And it's the most wonderful feeling. It's the thing that I can actually qualify the closest to just being in the spirit realm. Eyes are closed, nothing else. I'm not listening to anything. I've got the earphones on just to drown out external sounds, and the mask on to get as much light out of my way, and just go in. And then it's like, wow. And what happens is you start to feel so good that you forget about it. I mean, that's me, weeks, I feel fantastic. And then all of a sudden I'll get up in the morning and I just start because I feel so good, until eventually it's like, oh my God, something's wrong. Something is horribly wrong. Oh my God, I haven't meditated in a week.
Quick, throw them on.
Dude, but I can do it. That's the thing. If you've gotten to a point where you can understand what Mark and I are talking about, then getting back into that zone is not as difficult. Until you've experienced that just delicious sense of being one with spirit and the universe, man, you got to do it. It's almost like being high.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Next best thing.
it's yeah. I hate to use that term, but it's delicious. It's wonderful.
Man,
All right,
I got it. I'm gonna
go.
steal that the noise cancellation headphones. I'm gonna use that and get back to you because I've never tried that.
Dude, first just find a 5 to 10 minute guided meditation, and then use Insight Timer, because when they're done, they do that little gong thing at the end.
Yeah, I have that Insight Timer.
There's something about that little gong that as soon as I hear it, I just go. I'm gone for like 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And then I snap out of it, and I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for my day. It's not that long. I just, I love this is why I have this question. So I can spend 10, 15 minutes just talking about it and reminding myself of how wonderful it is and everybody else. I think we're going to do a meditation. We're going to do a meditation meeting inside that group for sure. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I love it. I love it. All right. So, Mark, how much clean time do you have? When's your anniversary date?
10 and a half years. My first day clean and sober was October 13th, 2008.
2008, October 13th. So every once in a while, it falls on Friday the 13th.
Wait, no, 2007.
2007.
Yeah, 2007, not 2008. Because I was 10 years sober this October.
Correct.
Yeah.
So last year.
My math is shaky.
Buddy, listen, there's no judgment here. All right. So before we dive into your story, Mark, quickly tell us how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how they made you feel.
Yeah, the first time I drank was at a sleepover with my buddy. And I couldn't have been more than 10 or 12. And could I I want to start with, can I get into my story? Because I'll get right to that moment. But I want to explain.
I'll tell you what. Let's just do that. So now, Mark.
Yeah, here we go.
Turn this show over to you. It's time for you
right.
to share your story, the battle of drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and then finally your journey into recovery up until today. So, Mark, take it away.
All right, here we go. Well, pray for me, y'all. Here we go.
Already did.
No, because I wanted to the first moment that I can remember where I was thinking alcoholically was before I took my first drink, right? And I pinpointed this in my years of being sober and reflecting and working steps and stuff. And I would, before I ever drank, I had this habit, and I can remember being in our local delicatessen, right? You know, waiting for a sandwich or waiting for anything, and they have those little red swivel stools. And I'd sit on those stools and I'd swivel around and I'd look at the people around. And I can just remember this feeling of, I guess you could call it envy, you know? But it's this, I had this, you know, this very sick feeling that, man, I just wanted to be anybody but me.
Wow.
And it didn't matter. I could walk down the street and see a bum begging for change, and I would look at them with admiration because even they understood something I didn't. They could just beg for change. They knew what to say. They knew how to act. For whatever reason, I had this feeling that I was unfit for the world, and unfit for my own skin, sort of thing. And I wanted to share that because that's where I was coming from when I took my first drink. And the first time I got drunk was with my friend at a sleepover. We took all the clear liquors, like the vodka, the gin, and we replaced it with water when we were done. And we were making highballs, and screwdrivers. And I had in my mind what it took to get drunk, or what that meant. So, me and my buddy were going, and there was a point in the night when my friend turned to me and said, that's enough. And I could remember being so taken away with this feeling that I told him, I said, nope, it's not enough. And I got up and I put my arms out and I walked in a straight line. And I said, see, right? I can walk in a straight line. Haven't you seen cops? You're not drunk unless you can't walk a straight line. And I drank more, and I just drank more than he did. And my very first time setting out to get drunk, I woke up in my friend's basement with a Nintendo controller, imprinted on my forehead, and the Super Mario Brothers inviting me to press start on the screen.
Oh.
I shit you not. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm, 10 and I'm waking up, and my friend the next day is telling me all these things I can't remember. And I am saying to myself, yes, like I got out of myself. I took, there was this person that took over, and I could take my hands off the wheel, I could take a break from being me, and it was exhilarating. It was amazing. I loved it. There's a lot said about the things, the way that alcohol doesn't work for us, but in a lot of major ways, alcohol worked spiritual wonders in my life.
Yes.
The St. Francis prayer, self-forgetting, by self-forgetting, we find, learning and learning how to forget myself through drink and stuff like that, was an amazing journey, and I loved it. And the thing was, though, it's not like my friend was sitting there telling me what a great guy I was being. It's not like he was sitting there saying how funny I was, when I was blacked out. But that's not what I heard. All I heard was, wow, I got to take a break from being me, and someone else can step up and suffer the way I suffer in my place for a while. So, what I thought was this amazing solution to life, it was actually just a blackout drunk. So that really summarizes a lot of my approach to drugs and alcohol. And it didn't get any better. I had consequences throughout high school. I was able to get by because I loved that feeling, getting free of all inhibition. I loved that so much that I would do everything I could during the week. Man, I hit the books. I was always into sports, so athletics were big, and I would do everything. I would work hard, and I would work hard in order to get to that Friday night and to let it all go, to hit that oblivion, hit that point of no return. And I realized there was a connection. As long as I take care of my business, then I can have those, total, moments of just oblivion. And so I continued along that course. I guess, summarize the work hard, play hard mentality.
Mm-hmm.
That was very much, my approach to life. I didn't last long after college, though. Once I got into the real world, I went out to LA. I was going to be a screenwriter, right? So I pack up all my stuff. I go to LA. I'm sleeping on couches. I lasted a year out there. The supervisor where I worked was also my dealer. So it was very much the work environment that people think of when they think about Hollywood. My experience was pretty close to that. So I was out there, and I got to a point where I was going through these bouts of, I guess, depression. If I had a better word, I'd use it. But, it was these bouts of I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to see anybody. And during those times, I was drinking heavily. I was all alone. And I was completely afraid. I was afraid to move. I was afraid to open my mouth. And then, these moments would come, and it'd be like snap. Like all of a sudden, one or two things go my way, and now I am partying. I'm in the Hollywood Hills, and I'm going to work the next day, and I'm schmoozing, and I'm doing this. And throughout that entire experience, I was drinking, and I was surrounding myself with people, and I was scared shitless, because I was scared shitless that, if I wake up the next day, I'm right back to that misery. So I was just running scared and drinking and oblivious to what I was doing to myself. I got to a point though when I was living in Los Angeles where the weed I was smoking, wasn't helping me be creative anymore, and that shot of bourbon before bed wasn't putting me to sleep, and the cocaine I was snorting wasn't making me social like it used to, or so all these drugs, these habits I picked up that at one point worked wonders for me, right? They all stopped working, but I couldn't stop using them, right? So I got in this cycle where it's like, well, if I can't sleep, I might as well stay up, Oh, I got a script to write. I'll just stay up all night, write my script, and then go to work the next day. Well, then what's going to get me through work the next day? Man, I got to take some trips to the bathroom, and I got to get to happy hour so I can meet them here and go off there, and then I get home and I still can't sleep. So I had this cycle that for me ended in a drug-induced psychosis is what I was found as. My best friend from college drove me down to Mexico. It was a mini intervention. And here's the crazy thing, though. I'm down there. It's Saturday. It's October 13th, 2007. I didn't have a drink or drug down there in Mexico. My buddy intervened. He said, don't bring any of this stuff down. And I was off the reservation. I was batshit crazy. I went through withdrawals on my own. I sat in that bed and I sweated through the mattress. And I was delusional. I was seeing things. I was hearing things. I didn't have a drink that day, but I was out of my mind, right? I narrowly escaped out of there. At one point, I'm in this small Mexican town, and I'm getting naked, and I'm running around. I'm running around a church.
No.
Yeah, talking about the apocalypse.
Wow.
Yeah, I had one of those bottoms. I almost got my life taken from me because I was on a farm, and I was sitting in a truck, and the farmer, the owner, came back. And now, take this with a grain of salt, because I was clinically insane. But he comes out with a scythe, right?
A what?
Here's the reaper. He's a farmer, right? But I'm thinking that the end has come. But as crazy as this all was, when I stepped out of this guy's truck and he had his blade, right? I thought to myself, finally, I was so ready to go. I was so sick. That feeling of kind of being sick with who I was.
Yes.
And all that running I did from, facing what I couldn't face. Man, I was ready to go. I was so relieved. Man, that was my lowest moment. Man, I was ready to die. I was hoping I'd die, and he didn't kill me. He put me in his truck, and he drove me back to the cabin where all the white people stay. And my friend drove me to San Diego and admitted me to a psychiatric facility, man. And that's where I got diagnosed and spent a couple days there, still sleepless, trying to figure it out, but got sent to a 28-day rehab. And that was the last thing I thought was my problem, was drugs and alcohol. I couldn't believe they're sending me to a rehab. You got to be kidding me. I thought I was going to have to go solve all the world's problems, Yep. I thought I was immortal. So that's where my recovery journey started, was at a 28-day rehab. And I still remember, like, a couple days in, right? And you got all these grown men. I was the youngest kid there. I was 24, and these were all grown men with real problems, And I felt like I had nothing wrong with me. I was just kind of, on this little break vacation so I could, get myself together again, right? I would not admit I was an alcoholic. I would not admit I was an addict. I was not admitting anything. People, I was snubbing people. I wouldn't let anybody near me because I was so fragile at that point, right? I was so close to being discovered, and the crazy thing about a rehab is you got no place to go, and like 3 days in, they gave me a prayer to read, right? Slow me down, Lord, is what the prayer was, right? Which is the perfect thing for me to read, right? And I had it in my hands, right? And I couldn't read the words. It was like the letters, probably because I hadn't slept in a week, right? The letters are floating around, right? and I can't shake it off, and for all that pride I had and all that, I got this all figured out, man. I couldn't fucking read. So I had nothing left to say. So I said, my name is Mark. I'm an alcoholic. And the entire group, all those men in unison go, yes, you are. Right. Which is, I guess it's that was tradition, right? When punks like me go in there and refuse to admit it. So they all, yes, you are, man. And I laughed, right? For some reason, I thought this was this big deal, like this secret that I kept in or something, or this thing I refused to admit. And they said that, man, and I laughed. And I felt a relief that no drug can give me. Man, no drink can give me that relief that I felt. I didn't feel like I didn't fit in. I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. Like everything just slowed down. It was like, man, this is it. And I try to stay close to that, because as long as I have that going for me, the community, right? The honesty, as long as I have that going for me, man, everything else falls into place, So that was where things turned around for me. I try to always keep that moment, in the front of my mind for how this thing works, right?
Dude, I've done this for over 3 years, and there's only been a few that parallel my story, right? That I remember. It was the cocaine. It was the drug-induced psychosis. I can't tell you how many interviews I've been on where I say it finally got to a point where I was in a drug-induced psychosis. I wanted to start my own religion. I thought they were chasing me. I started throwing all my clothes out of the car because I thought it had little tracking devices inside my shirt, and I watched Enemy of the State. So I tell it, you know what I mean? I'm driving around in my underwear.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm listening to your story, and I'm like, dude, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Mark's, had exactly the same thing happen to him. Right.
Now you know why I've been a lifetime listener ever since I heard your story, and I said, well, I mean, this guy's got my life and I got it in my pocket whenever I need it.
There it is.
Yeah.
There's so many great takeaways in this story. Let me see here. Where do I want to pick up from? Because I love that Grim Reaper part. I mean, I'm totally picturing you naked, running around some guy's backyard, right, in another country.
Yeah.
You can't speak the language, right? In a drug-induced psychosis, and there's the Grim Reaper. If that's not a spiritual awakening, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Amen. But here's where I started taking notes, and I wanted to ask you as soon as we got there, because you talk about not wanting to be yourself. As long as you can remember, you would have rather been a bum on the street, because at least he knows who he is, and I remember thinking to myself, I used to say this too. I go, man, I would have traded places with anyone. I would have traded places with a gardener, because he had a better tan and was in better shape, and he had a full head of hair, and it was just a constant me comparing myself to others on a daily basis, constantly, like you're talking about sitting in that red chair and comparing yourself to people, in the restaurant, right? Were you ever able to identify where that suffering came from as a child?
I don't think I ever took it beyond that that moment and that feeling. No, I've never gone really too much deeper than that. I think I could, though. I mean, I've got plenty of life to live, I hope, and plenty of time to think about it. So,
well, because this is the thing too. When I coach people and I hear stories like this, it immediately triggers me, right? And not triggers me in the sense of it triggers my own story, but I immediately go to when I am trying to not be me, and all of a sudden I'm using drugs and alcohol to become somebody else. The truth is that you're not trying to become somebody else. You are trying to connect with the most authentic version of you. I call it one drink Mark, or one drink O, or one drink Steve, or one drink Jan, right? It doesn't matter who it is. When you take that first drink and it hits the dopamine, you do some Coke or you do whatever it takes, and there's that window of time, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on what you take, right? There's that window of time before it really kicks in, and the ease and comfort just kind of wafts over you. And now all of a sudden, I can say whatever I want to say. I can think whatever I want to think. I can be whoever I want to be. But the truth is, who you're trying to be is you. You're just trying to be you. And somewhere along the way, you got lost. And either somebody told you it was not okay to be Mark, and you believed it. And you've been trying to connect with Mark your whole life. And that's what that drink represents. This is where, like, when I'm coaching somebody, I see the light bulb go on. I go, you're just trying to be you, man. You're just trying to connect with the most authentic version of yourself. And it's liberating and it's free. And I usually ask people, tell me the traits that are reminiscent with that, right? Like, what does it feel like to be that person, right? And it's usually these amazing character traits, right? Like, for example, when you were, in those first couple of drinks, right? How were you feeling?
Yeah. Man, I love that. Oh,
yeah.
I love that idea. Man, I'm going to steal that, and I'm going to use that to help someone the way you just helped me. That's a great thing to think about. And that's so true for me. And it's like getting sober. It's great to go around and share about the fact that I have found that thing. I mean, I've become an authentic me. I like who I am, and all this stuff is absolutely true. But man, I gotta say, when things get dark in my life, and I'm not talking about external things happening, but when I go through those moments that I go through, when I experience symptoms of depression, right? It's usually some symptom of what you're talking about, and it's just so I love the way you framed it, and I'm going to have to go back and listen to this podcast, I guess, because I gotta write down more. But man, that is it. It's the one drink Mark. It's the
I'm trying to encapsulate that moment. How can I re-encapsulate this moment? How can I encapsulate it? And how can I extend it as long as I can? And I can't. The thing is, with the drugs and alcohol, you can't, but you don't realize that's what you're trying to do. You don't recognize that you're just trying to take this moment and extend it out. And then once you pass the next drink or, hit the next line or whatever, boom, oblivion.
Yeah.
All bets are off. Now it's I don't even know who that is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You overshoot the mark, right?
You overshoot the mark. So here's the thing. Anxiety, anger, depression, these are all natural emotions that are your own authentic version of yourself trying to tell you you're focusing on what you don't want instead of focusing on what you do want. Right? It's a simple formula. I feel anxious, right? And I don't want to feel anxious. Fucking be anxious. Be excited about being anxious. If you're anxious or you're depressed or whatever the case may be, it's like, whoa, focusing on what I don't want. Okay. Yeah. So what is it that I'm focusing on right now that is putting me in this state? And then how do I recalibrate and start focusing on what I do want? And the way to frame that when we talk about reframing is as simple as, I don't know. I don't want to deal with this. Like I'm behind on my mortgage. You know what I mean? So now all I'm focusing on is, I'm 2 months behind on my mortgage. And I wake up every single morning, anxious, terrified, afraid because I can't pay my mortgage. I'm focusing on what I don't want is to be behind on my mortgage instead of, okay, what I do want. well, I want to be on time. I want to go ahead and get caught up with my mortgage, right?
Yeah.
So now the question becomes, okay, so what is it that I had to do? What is it that I need to do? What steps do I need to take? And this is a very simple exercise right now because I can't think of anything else at the moment, right? But as soon as you start shifting into a solution-based mindset, instead of the problem-based mindset of, oh my God, I'm going to lose my house. Oh my God, I can't pay. Oh my God, right? Like I get frozen and paralyzed. To break out of that paralyzed state, I have to go into action. Okay. And this is where like going to a basketball game or going to your writing course or going to a meeting, right? And start the step of, I'm in this pickle, don't know what to do. Love some suggestions. Or going to the basketball game, playing all out and letting the endorphins kick in, right? And something happens to break the state because we want to do a pattern interrupt. Right. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. It's like, how do I break the state? How do I do a pattern interrupt? And how do I stop? And how do I ask myself, oh my God, I'm focusing on what I don't want. I need to focus on what I do want. And then the shifts starts to happen. And that's where your network is key. Yeah. Your network, who your friends are. You are the average of the 5 people you are the closest to, the people that you can reach out to in an instant, right? That you can pick up the phone and say, dude, I am in a jackpot right now. I'm heading in the wrong direction and I need somebody to reel me back in. Here's the direction I want to go into and I just don't know how to do it, right? And so those are the things that as soon as I start to see this kind of stuff, man, first thing I'll do is like, okay, well, let's go back into your childhood and when did the suffering start? When I hear a word like suffering, 10-year-old, where does that come from? It came from somewhere. And I'm thinking about I'm thinking about disconnecting at 10, something happened, and it could have been something either very subtle or something so traumatic that there was a shutdown and it's just in the peripheral, not in the peripheral, it's in the subconscious, right? And all I know is it starts to make its way to the front. I start to look for a way out. Yeah. Drugs and alcohol is the quickest way to do it, right? So, this is a great like episode in the sense of like just connecting with somebody like my twin brother who is much younger, better looking, has a full head of hair, right? but has had
less shine though.
Yeah, a lot less shine too. It's a good thing. But we've lived the same life.
Yeah.
I would have traded places with anyone before I even started drinking and using.
Yeah.
And then I started drinking and using, then I was perfectly happy with me.
Right.
I love me all of a sudden, right? Until it gets bad. And then I go back to, oh my God, I need to trade places with anybody or worse. I'm ready to just check out. And I love what you said about the Grim Reaper because I have been there, man.
Yeah.
I have been there where it's like, thank you. It's finally here. I'm ready to go. Take me, man. Yeah. I am so tired of doing this. And it hasn't served me in a long time. And it used to be the solution. And now it's just the problem.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You got a lot to write about, Mark.
Yeah, man. I got a lot to think about after this one. I feel like I've been having a free coaching session. I love that. I love these things, this pattern interrupt. I'm writing down all these phrases for myself to think about. This is really good.
Well, the thing is that I was like, I'm blessed. You know what I mean? Like as soon as I started moving in this direction, I hired a coach at one point, and these questions started to come up, and my life just started to change instantly. Instantly, as soon as I started challenging these thoughts that I've been carrying around for years, and all of a sudden I get to put them on a stand in a courtroom, right? And there's a jury, and there's a defendant, and there's a plaintiff, and there's defense attorney, and there's the judge. The whole thing's there, and there it is, and I get to put it on the stand, cross-examine it, right, and really, right, challenge these thoughts into a point where it's like, this is not truth.
Yeah.
This is not truth. The reality is I've been searching for me all my life. Think about who you are. You went to LA to become a screenwriter. Your gift is your ability to write. That's your gift, And somewhere along the lines, it somehow did not make the cut.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it wasn't like, well, I like writing, but it's a nice hobby. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna be able to make a living off of this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Probably some thoughts like that, right? And even when you did live, that's a pipe dream, and I'm living on a couch, right? I'm doing the LA thing, right? But at some point, when I actually give myself permission and say, are there other people that are successful screenwriters? Hell yeah. That make a ton of money? Oh yeah. Why not me?
Right.
You know, and so we move into that direction. Everything becomes, I'm going to challenge every thought I've ever had since I was a child that I can remember that has been holding me back, that I made a decision to allow it to become a limiting belief, right? Because everything that I do is me making a decision to allow it to happen in my life. And the drugs and alcohol were my savior. They allowed me to let go of all this crap and be me. So I don't fault it in the sense of for what it was, right? Like, it's out of my life because it'll never do what it did in the beginning ever again. And I know that. But now with the awareness that this is what I was searching for my whole life, me.
There it is. I love it, man. That's good stuff.
It's great stuff, bro. Great stuff. I love the LA. Dude, I was born and raised in LA, dude.
Oh, really?
Born and raised. I moved here when I was 28 years old. I used to work in Brentwood at a restaurant. Yeah. You know what I mean? The whole thing, dude. Working with all bunch of actors. Everybody there's got their what is it? Those pictures. The what
profiles.
Is it? The headshots. Yeah, they're headshots.
Yeah.
I'd be at work and everybody's comparing headshots and what do you think of these? I've got an appointment next week with my agent. You know, and I'd be like, what a joke. You're just a waiter just like me, man.
Yeah. Where did you wait? Because there's a sports bar in Brentwood I went to all the time, man. It's like a UCLA bar.
I used to work at a place called Ole LA in Brentwood on the 3rd floor above the California Pizza Kitchen. That was diagonal, catty corner from the Mezzaluna.
All right. I know where that was.
I was working there when it happened.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. That was a trip. I hadn't even started doing drugs yet.
You didn't need it at that point.
Dude, I was in a daze. Living in LA, man. Just living the dream, right? As a waiter.
Yeah.
You can make good money as a waiter, though.
Oh, yeah. Until the dream comes true, you got something to do in the meantime.
All right. So beautiful. All right. So Mark.
Yeah.
I think I took over most of your interview. So we're going to shift back to Mark. Right. So I'm going to ask you, we're going to start closing up. But what I want to do is I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery. And I want you to respond with 5 answers that you can inspire and create insight for our newcomers. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hit me.
All right. So number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
Denial.
Oh, yeah.
Flat and simple. It was the iron face, the poker face, the nothing's wrong with me. I don't need help. I don't have a problem. You guys obviously have problems, right? I was always raised, and to some extent, it's a great attribute I have today, but, I finish things. I solve problems. I sorted out on my own. And this sobriety thing is not something that any one of us does alone. In fact, going it alone is the problem. And that was a really long, hard lesson for me to learn. I didn't just, get shipped out of Mexico and land in a chair and say, my name is Mark, I'm an alcoholic, and a magic show goes on, a flick of a switch and I'm okay. It was a long, hard, uncomfortable road. And looking at the things in my life that I've never wanted to look at, and making amends to people that I never imagined, that I'm waiting amends to get from. It's like there's just the program of recovery is just long, and as you keep on harping, and I think you're absolutely right. My program of recovery just has thrown me into a community, and many communities. I mean, and that is just so critical that I'm not doing this alone. And there are things that I can't solve. There are problems that only other people can solve, and there are problems that only a higher power can solve. And I need to recognize those problems and let other people, let my higher power solve them. There's nothing I can do. And understanding that, it's that paradox, man. It's the surrender to win. It's that has become my most powerful, characteristic. I think is being able to rely on help and get help when and where I need it. And that is a source of strength. It is not a source of weakness. To be humble enough to say, you know what, like you said, man, you're the sum of the average of the 5 people you're nearest to. All that, like, man, you calling people when I'm in a fix, that is the most powerful stuff, because a burden shared is a burden halved, man, and a blessing shared is a blessing doubled. And the more I can admit that I need help, or that I struggle with this or that, or that the more I can get out there, man, and say I'm anxious, but like, and that's okay. The more I can accept what is going on with me as what needs to be going on with me right now, the freer I become. And it's not easy, though. I mean, I'm kind of glad there's no sort of graduating from this thing, because it's like I continue to have just new things to work on, and new things to think about. And, I'm grateful for that. But it is an ongoing thing, and it's just about creating those habits,
It is an ongoing life. It's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing learning process.
Yeah.
Until the day we die.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go inward. Right? And the answers are inside. That's true. But when you're self-serving, the answers get weird.
Yeah.
Dude.
You get twisted.
You might as well be in a drug-induced psychosis.
Yeah.
All right? Because when you start asking, when there's a problem and you go inward and you just stay inward, right?
Yeah.
It gets weird fast.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to sit and meditate every morning, pray, ask for guidance, listen, right? But you got to get out and be of contribution, right? We have to share what we've been given. We have to share what we've got. We've got to be able to help other people. As soon as we say things, as soon as it comes out of our mouths, it sounds very, very different the minute it comes out of our mouths, especially the crazier it is. Like, hey, dude, I was thinking this. Like, wow, was I really thinking that? Right? And then, or it's like, wow, that sounded a lot better than I even thought it was. Like, I thought that was going to sound ridiculous. And that actually makes a lot of sense, because we warp everything on our own. So that idea of being of contribution, right? Like you were saying, that spiritual connection comes with helping others.
Yeah.
We have to, right? We have to be in contribution, because self-service, whew,
yeah,
dude, this is not a yogurt. This is not a frozen yogurt shop. This self-service is not encouraged here.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Dude, you know what? Too, I love this one. Surrender to win. I was at a meeting on Sunday. There was 2 people there talking about the second step. One guy went as far as to say, he goes, I'm having such a tough time with step 2 that I told my sponsor I'm willing to work step 1 all over again. I'm willing to answer 68 questions all over again, not to go into step 2. And I was like, wow. And then there was another person that was sharing. It's like, man, I'm so emotional and I'm crying as I'm doing my step work. She was sitting right next to him, and I was like, are you on step 4? She's like, no, I'm on step 2. And I'm like, what? Step 2? All you got to do is surrender.
Yeah.
Like what I came to believe. Like that's the most terrifying thought, is like some people have such a difficult time with the idea of even coming to believe. The pain goes into suffering, dude. Like surrender to win, bro.
People out there listening, man, it is so much better on the other side. I know. I had, oh man, agnostic, doubtful, intellectual, you name it. But on the other side is faith. And man, that is where the good stuff is in my life. I mean, that's everything in my life today.
Dude, that is where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
Man, it is. It feels so good. Let go.
Let go, baby.
All right. Beautiful. All right. So number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery, when you accepted you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
So I had I had a moment. I was pretty stubborn early on. I was stubborn to admit, and then I was stubborn to go to work, and I was stubborn to look at these things, and stubborn throughout. But I went through this routine, right, where, the 12-step fellowship that I would go to, right, sponsorship is included in that. And I'd go around, and after meetings, be out there, chain smoking, saying, yeah, I need to find a sponsor, need to find a sponsor. And I would try and I'd work with, a couple people, and I didn't know I was doing it then, but now I see it. Every time they asked me to get to work on this tough stuff, man, I said, you know what? It's not working out. I told one guy that, it's not going to work out because I thought he lied about how much Oxy cost. It's like, it's not $40 a pill. Everybody knows that. So it's like I created all of these excuses and ways out of doing the work. And one guy said to me, when I said, sorry, bud, it's not working out. One guy said to me, he said, Mark, sooner or later, you have to do the work. And then, how you hear a bad song on the radio and you can't get out of your head for days and days? Man, I just heard, it was everywhere I went. I just heard, sooner or later, you have to do the work. Sooner or later, you have to do the work, until finally I just gave in and said, fine, right? And I started doing the work. And it didn't take long when I started doing the work to realize, oh, well, this makes me feel good. And, I go through, like, I was all hung up, like, man, this inventory stuff, right? Like, why on earth would I go through and relive all of this, this darkest stuff in my life? What point is that? And then I realized, oh, because I put it on paper and I don't have to relive it anymore. And it was those moments where, I may have, stripped naked in a Mexican church, but, I don't necessarily call that a spiritual awakening.
I would.
Yeah. But it's like, it's like, yeah, that back then I'd be feeling withdrawals, and I'd say, ooh, like thinking that, I was waking up to the sunlight of the spirit, but I was really just kicking drugs. I found that this path of recovery has led me, more to a daily, sustainable, program of action that just, man, feels really good. I get closer and closer to, what you said, the one drink Mark without taking one drink. I get closer to that.
The most authentic version of Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any getting there all the way, but I could keep getting closer to it, and writing helps me a lot. But yeah, that's how I'd answer that one.
Beautiful, beautiful. And man, talk about what newcomers need to hear, period. Right? It's like, it's not working.
Yeah.
That's not working for me. It's because you're not doing it.
Right.
How could it possibly be working for you when you haven't attempted to do it?
Yeah.
And there is these layers of limiting beliefs that lead to the step work, that I have all these excuses lined up right in front of why I can't do it. And man, in so many cases, it's so deep and interwoven into the subconscious that you cannot think your way through this.
Right.
There is no thinking. There is no convincing. You have to sit down and just do it. And then somewhere in there, you're going to get a spiritual awakening of the educational variety.
Yeah.
You start writing, the miracle starts to happen, and all of a sudden the light goes on and you're like, oh, I think this is what they were talking about.
Yeah. You know, and how long does it take, man? Yeah, well, it takes about a year and 6 hours, right? A year is sitting around saying, no, I'm not doing it, and then 6 hours to finally do it and say, oh, this is awesome. You know, it's just, you got to get to it, and it's worth it.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. So number 3, do you have a favorite book you would recommend to our newcomers that you read in early recovery, or you're reading out, whatever?
Oh yeah, I mean, so I'm reading. Man, I read a lot. You know,
I'm sure.
Yeah, you know, it's like it's my calling, man, to read and write. The book I'm reading now is great. It's called and I'm forgetting the title, but it's In the Shadow of Hungry Ghosts by
Yeah. That's Gabor Mate.
Yeah, Gabor Mate. That book is awesome.
The Realm of the Hungry Ghost.
The Realm of the Hungry Ghost. Man, it's transforming my concept of addiction. Early on, I was suggested to read 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz.
Great book.
That one, those 4 agreements, be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And, there's a lot that he talks about in there about the tape that we play in our mind, which, I can hear in your message, too. It's those things we tell ourselves over and over again that we need to stand up to that voice. And that book was incredible. Also, The Spirituality of Imperfection by Ernest Kurtz is an excellent book that has a lot of like 12-step spirituality and sort of where it came from.
Yes. Absolutely.
A lot of recovery programs that lean on this spirituality stuff. It's all sort of put together in this book about how, we're all imperfect and we're broken. And that's where our strength is in admitting that we are hurt and broken and not trying to hide from that.
And that is all in what we were talking about earlier, in the sense of recognizing that my brain does not have a way of communicating with me the way that I'm used to communicating. I'm used to having a conversation, asking a question, and getting feedback.
Right.
Your brain does not have the ability to have a dialogue with you. So it speaks to you through your body. So the depression and the anxiety and the overwhelmed and the anger and the frustration, that's your body's way of communicating with you. It's a very simple thing. And if we don't allow ourselves to go deep into the rabbit hole, as it starts to come up, it's one question. What is my body trying to tell me? What am I looking at? What is the thing that I am obviously looking at what I don't want? The question here is, what is it that I do want? And as soon as we start to reframe just that quick little 30 seconds of reflection, boom. Once you create that practice, you'll be able to completely reframe the thoughts in your head and move forward. These are great books, by the way. 4 Agreements, awesome. Realm of Hungry Ghost, super, super recommended. Right? Gabor Mate is all over the place when it comes to recovery. So those are some great suggestions. I love it. All right. So number 4, Mark, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
I think the thing that changed my life that I heard early on was, and it's funny because this is so much reflective of the conversation we've had today. But oftentimes that's it, right? Recovery is reading the same thing over and over again until it clicks. But you can't think yourself into a new way of acting. You've got to act yourself into a new way of thinking, right? There's no changing your thoughts by sitting there. You've got to get out and do the next right thing. And, to put it in your words, you got to interrupt that pattern, actively. You got to do something. You can't just let those thoughts swallow you whole. And the best way to do it, man, is to go be of service. Go ask someone how their day is going. Go on the, that SHAIR podcast accountability group and all the different networks that are coming, that are out there for us to engage with, are all full of opportunities just to see what's other people are going through. And it allows us to get out of our own heads. And man, that's been the biggest piece of advice that has really worked for me.
The pattern interrupt. It's a break in the state, right? As you get caught up in whatever emotional state you're at, that's a beautiful way to get out of it. Call somebody and go, "Hey man, how are you doing today?"
Yeah.
And then just listen. That's a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. It'll break the state that you're in, right? So that's why people that are athletes, people that like, I'm going to go for a run. It's because it works, right? Like I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated. I can't seem to piece together the answers or whatever the case may be, where I've got this meeting coming up and I've got to I'm not quite sure how to express myself. Oh, I'm going to go on a run. All they've done is just, if it's a pattern interrupt, because I get stuck in a loop. I get stuck in this loop of, I don't know what to do. 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 I'm going to go for a run. So your body, it's a physiological change that allows you to have a mental shift. Right? It's so easy. The body and mind work together beautifully. But until you recognize how to communicate effectively with yourself, right, then you will get stuck. Right. And your body, and it'll just create more and more pain because it's like, you're not listening. So let me just make this more painful.
Let me just pour it on.
So pick up the phone. All right. Go. No, what?
Oh, I was just going to say, man, one of the favorite things I wrote on that blog is a friend of mine died of an overdose, and I was driving down about 3-hour drive to his wake. And pick up the phone, man. I went in my phone, and I was so, this is how I dealt with some anger, right? Because I'm so pissed off at fentanyl and the proliferation of these things and people's misunderstanding of addiction, and it led to the death of a good friend of mine. So I'm driving, I'm scrolling through my phone, and every contact info I had, man, I called everybody, right? So I was writing about this experience of, it was 3.5 hours there, 3.5 hours back. I spent 7 hours on the phone with countless people from every stage of my recovery, man. And I didn't get into my friend much. I was just like, how are you doing? What's going on? And that's sort of what I had to do. I just felt sort of like I had to do it. But man, the power of picking up that phone is really strong. And just, if you're listening, I think when somebody calls you, if you're able, pick up the phone. That's all I'll say.
Ooh, man. Absolutely powerful. That works absolutely on both ways. When you need it, use it, and be available when somebody else does.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, Mark, final question. If you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would it be?
The first drink gets you drunk. Not the 5th, not the 7th. I don't care what tolerance you have. If you drink like me, the first drink gets you there. Don't pick up. Beautiful. Go to a meeting. Call somebody.
And that is a wrap.
Hey, could you make sure you put somewhere in there to thank you so much for everything you're doing in the community? I wanted to say it at the jump, but I don't think I did. But
Say
man,
it
just
now.
okay, yeah, Omar, man, I wanted to really thank you for being such a strong and consistent voice in recovery and providing all these outlets for people to interact. I've met people through the SHAIR network, and it just has been a great journey. It's so powerful to have resources like this in the palm of our hands, because we are instant gratification seekers. And to be able to have something in our pockets that is a solution rather than a problem is a blessing. So thank you.
Dude, it is my absolute honor. The gifts that I have been given from this enormous amount of service, I can't explain in words what, doing what I do and producing the podcast and the SHAIR Recovery Network, the Facebook group, the emails that I get, the private messages, it's overwhelming, right? But to recognize, there's so many people that say, if I could just help one person. And when you start to get into the realm of where you're helping thousands of people, it's mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
And I think it takes a certain amount of recovery too, to be able to stay right sized. Cause I have to always be, no matter how many times I hear it, I always like, it's HP, baby.
Yeah.
God has given me an opportunity to watch him work through me, period. That's it. End of story. I get to watch God work through me. That is how I see it.
Yeah.
And it helps keep me right sized, right? But I do. Thank you. Cause it is a blessing.
So, off the record.
Wait a minute. We're still recording. We can do it after. All right.
Okay.
So folks, before we close up, Mark,
Yeah.
if somebody that's listening to this wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Well, if you go to the blog, it's just markgoodson.com. I have all my social media outlets there. I got a contact form. If you want to send me an email, the contact form does it. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Medium, Instagram, all these ways. You can send me an email, and that is where it all happens. That blog is a public thing, but I love having those private messages where I get to say the things that I can't say publicly, and really get to business, working and helping and sharing with others.
All right, so folks, I'm going to have this listed on Mark's show notes. So just go there. I'll have the website, all his social media. Click on whatever you want to click on to get a hold of Mark. It'll all be there on the show notes. All right, so folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Dude, now that's a wrap.